we've made a lot of mistakes over the years. I'll be the first to tell you that as a serial entrepreneur that thrives in the chaos, there's been a lot of movements in how we handle things. And, when you mentioned earlier about, that glass ceiling, I think, we always want to venture into success and, getting things done and seeing our businesses grow and do the things we want them to do. But it took me a very long time to figure that out. And for many, they don't have the opportunity and they blow themselves out of the water inside of 5 years, right? I mean, the statistics are there. So how do we help others to not saying not commit the mistakes? I'm saying let's try to minimize the timeline so that they can rebound quicker and better and not have to suffer as long as some of us have.
There's a place every business owner lands at some point when you can see where you want to go. You just can't damn well get there. It's that glass ceiling, and it's infuriating. And that's why we're going to talk about it today. That's why we have Jimmy here today. He's going to tell us a little bit about it himself, why this topic matters to him, and why it absolutely matters to you. Jimmy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Shauna. I'm glad to be here. Pleasure.
Wonderful. So tell us a little bit about yourself, and then let's dive into this whole idea of being stuck in this plateaued space and not being able to move past.
Definitely. So I'm Jimmy Rios. I'm the founder of Rios Business Advisors and Rios Business Funding, amongst an eco-universe of businesses that we built, verticals that we built over a span of about 23 years. And we've made a lot of mistakes over the years. I'll be the first to tell you that as a serial entrepreneur that thrives in the chaos, there's been a lot of movements in how we handle things. And when you mentioned earlier about the glass ceiling, I think we always want to venture into success and getting things done and seeing our businesses grow and do the things we want them to do. But it took me a very long time to figure that out. And for many, they don't have the opportunity and they blow themselves out of the water inside of 5 years, right? The statistics are there. So how do we help others to not saying not commit the mistakes? I'm saying let's try to minimize the timeline so that they can rebound quicker and better and not have to suffer as long as some of us have.
I absolutely agree. And I love how you've portrayed this in such a transparent way. The thing, I've got a pet peeve about some people who are like, oh, you were going to make sure that you don't make these mistakes. Don't make the same mistakes I do. And that's just so idealistic and unrealistic. And I love the fact that you just jumped in and said, no, you very well may make some of the same mistakes.
Yes.
But that resilient factor, that ability to bounce back, that comes from having mentors and advisors who can actually get you through it in a way that keeps your head above water.
So that's such an important part, because I think my biggest mistake, outside of the physical ones that you're going to make in choices and bad advice or bad whatever, I think for me, it was the time it took me to finally start getting a mentor, an advisor, and really seeing it as an investment in my business as opposed to a cost. Everything is going to have a cost, but there's a difference between the needs and the wants. We talk about it in budgeting. We talk about it in a lot of the realms of monies. But when does it become necessary or a necessary component of your business, right? No different than saying, well, I need to buy a computer. Well, for why? Because you need a computer for all these reasons. Well, why would you need to get an advisor, right? You don't know that. You don't know why. Many business owners don't even think or understand the different realms of help that come with advisory. And there's different advisors for different things, right? When we built this business over 23 years, it was because we had been in the verticals of taxes, insurance, marketing, bookkeeping, there's purchasing, contracts, law. There's so many things that encompass owning a business, not just the technical aspect of what you do, right? Because great electricians that decided to go start their electrical business, and then what? They hit a wall. They hit a wall because they didn't know how to market themselves to get more clients. They maybe got an influx of money and they didn't pay the taxes. All these different things are happening, or they just didn't do some things right and they shot themselves over, and now they're overspent. They have too much debt, and so there's a lot of ways that even on paper successful businesses can go under. How many businesses have we heard of that have been around for hundreds of years and all of a sudden they're going bankrupt? You read about it, right? When this technological AI and everything that's been happening started really taking place, there's been a lot of waves happening, and the reality is happening that there's going to be some businesses that haven't adapted that they're gonna get left behind, and the door is going to close on them, right? What do you do as a business owner when those shifts and changes and things and technology and other things that you can't control start happening? And what if you had an advisor that can see these things because they've already gone through some of those changes, right? That's when we start thinking differently and we start advising and talking differently.
Absolutely. It's a difference between having a knee jerk, I don't know, figure it out as you go type of reaction versus making an informed decision where you can, within reasonable doubt, predict the outcome.
Right.
That's a world of difference. I come from a background in psychology and neuroscience, and that contingency is invaluable in the world of research and progress.
100%.
I really love the idea of having somebody who not only has this insight from experience and research and expertise, but also is able to tune into, I guess, the more human side of things, because understanding that everybody's journey is unique to themselves plays a huge role, because I don't like to be just told what to do as an entrepreneur, right? That's why we became entrepreneurs. So I'm curious about how you really leverage individual identities in the way that you advise and in how people take action within and about their business.
You mentioned earlier about that psychology. Psychology is a very important part of everything that we do. I think you have to understand that every individual that comes through the door is different. They have different ways of acting, different backgrounds, history. If you don't know these things, you need to know these things, like as an advisor, because the dynamics that flow inside of that household, the culture, everything that encompasses the being, the person, right, that runs that business, there's a direct correlation between all those factors in what's happening in their business. And they might not see it because they're in it, right? So they don't see what's around them. But case in point, if I take, for example, a client in and I start asking these get to know you questions, right? Just to get to know who they are, their family dynamics and things. And we dive in and I start finding out that they're going through a divorce, that there's the kids might have to go with their mother, and all these things are happening. All of a sudden, I'm looking 2 or 3 steps ahead because I can already start seeing that there's a level of stress that he or she's going through that hasn't been accounted for on the paperwork, on the numbers that they're accounting for, right? But when I start digging deeper, I start seeing that there's problems. There's problems in credit. There's problems, and what of that has caused some of the problems at home, right? What of their business of because of mismanagement is causing this domino effect that has caused a lot of this. So if you don't go to the root cause of the problem, you can get band-aids all day long, but you're not really solving for anything. So as an advisor, I have to do my due diligence. I have to help you by understanding, and I'm very forward. I'm very open when I talk to my clients about what they're getting into with me, because I'm like, look, we're going to have to open this hood, look under the kimono, and really get deep in honesty, in trust, and understand that I'm only asking these things because I want to help you.
Right.
No different than a doctor when they get real with you after you go and do your exams and they start telling you these things, right?
Yeah.
When you're overweight and you have a prescription, right? And they say you need to lose X amount of weight, you need to eat better, and this is how you're going to do it. And they start prescribing medicine and a prescription to get better. They tell you you've got to come back in 90 days, right? Because we need to see a change, right? Now, you have two choices. You can take that information and start applying it in your life day by day, right? In action to see the results, hopefully. And I know for a fact because this everything I talk about, I've applied it in some form in my life, right? With me, it was diabetes and it was having gained a lot of weight, right? Now I'm running to my first 5K on Sunday, right? So I took the information, the data, and I started compartmentalizing it and how I was going to make the changes for myself.
Right.
And what did I have to do daily to hit that goal, right? There's a part where it wasn't just my coach, it wasn't my nutritionist or my doctor that did it for me. It was there telling me, look in the mirror, I'm going to give you a prescription, and then I need you to do it, right? So why are we any different as advisors, mentors? We're no different.
Just because it's business, it doesn't mean that you can't. It doesn't need to be applied in a similar way. And that's something that I thought was really interesting because yes, you need to apply it yourself. You need to take these actions. But you were talking about looking under the hood and it changing your advice, and that kind of rang a couple of bells for me because looking at a certain business structure, and I'm using myself and many of my wonderful clients as examples because typically I'm working with women. Typically they're service-based. Typically they have a family, often children, and that changes dynamics a little bit. And the reason I'm going to paint this picture as well is because it doesn't have to be as intense as you described with, oh, my relationship's falling apart and I've overshot this, whatever. I just want to give a breadth of examples here. Just like I take the majority of the summer off, or at least I work summer hours, quote unquote, right? My children are home. There are certain breaks that I take. Next week is March break where I am. So all of my children are going to be home. I'm going to work augmented hours. And what that means is that I would assume an advisor would give me different decision points than somebody who wasn't doing that. And what it also means is that we need to consider what kind of client flow can actually come in and be served to the quality, to the standard that you have. Maybe this changes whether or not an advisor says you should totally be doing ads right now, or perhaps it's no organic reach. Let's see who you meet at this event. Something like that. That shifts even in these little ways. All of that additional background information and the identity behind the business matters.
Totally. 100%. That is one of the most important things that you just mentioned is being able to pivot and understand that everyone is different and you're going to have to prescribe in a different way for the season, for the dynamics in what's happening in the world, right? And be empathetic to that, because I think we can lose sight. If I have success in an area and I don't ego check myself and be humble and forget that I was them at one point, right? Then we start giving advice, but from a different point of view, and that's not good. Because now you're trying to make them you. And that's not the point. That's not the goal. The goal here is to help them escalate and elevate from a position of where they're at. And that sometimes takes time. You have to be very empathetic to that.
Well, the other part is that the advice that would work for one person is just simply not going to work for the other. Regardless of empathy, regardless of human relationships, it simply won't work. I couldn't possibly tell a new mom to do the same thing as an empty nester.
Right.
That would make zero sense. Their roles and their lives and their capacity to hold space, time, energy is completely different.
It is.
So you need to have a customized approach into how you're going to leverage the tools that you have at your disposal, personally and professionally.
And you also have to be very aware of skill sets, their mindsets. Right? Just because this is the thing to do doesn't necessarily mean that person can embrace it, because I'll be the first to admit when I got introduced to AI, for example, it was very daunting for me. It was very scary. It was an unknown language, right? And when you don't know something and you don't feel comfortable in something, you tend to put it away. I'll get to it later. Out of mind. And I was putting my head in the sand, not wanting
Yeah.
to pretend it wasn't there and it didn't exist when it was all around me, right? And I have I have three teens, right? My 19-year-old daughter and twin boys that are 17, and it's all around them. They're in it every day. And so when I'm with them, I'm seeing this. And so I came to the realization that if I wanted to really take my business to the next level in everything that I'm trying to do, I had to adopt this new technology, right? And I started doing it, and I humbled myself to just take it step by step, and I became very back to basics type of thing. Teach me like a 5-year-old, right? But sometimes that's what has to happen. And why would it be any different for others in different areas of concern or topics that we talk about in needing help? Because sometimes people have a hard time saying, I need help, right?
Mhm.
Or asking for it, or being able to acknowledge where they're deficient or weak at in an area. And that's good. If you're able to talk about that, then we can find the solution a lot easier, because if I take assumptions, we all know what happens when you start assuming, right? And if me as an advisor or mentor just assume that you're going to be able to do this, I prescribe something that I think you should do, and then you don't do it at our next meeting. I ask you how to go with this, and that. Oh, well, it's still sitting there. What? What do you mean? Well, I don't know how to do any of that. And I'm like, oh. So I just wasted their time. Why
Seriously.
didn't I ask before? And it's okay if they're just, and I tell them that now, because again, in my advisory, I've learned these things from experience, right? Some of the pitfalls of an advisor is assumptions, and we can't do that. We need to be very forthright in asking the proper questions and uncovering where those deficiencies are.
Yes. Anticipating them so that we can have the appropriate workarounds for when
Yes.
certain things happen. So a really great example of that is one of my clients was saying, "Oh, I really want to post videos, and I want to because there was a very visual and emotionally impactful element of videos for the thing that this person does." And I said, "Yes, absolutely. That's a great idea." And then I started saying, and then you can probably record a longer clip and then cut it up into shorter clips. And I noticed a small change in her demeanor. And I was like, "Oh, you don't know how to do that." Excellent. So I rewound the clock and I said, what you're going to do is you're going to record multiple variably lengthed, that's a very awkward way to say it, videos. You're going to record 10-second videos, 50, 30, 60, 3-minute videos. And you're going to record all of these different ones. And you're going to use, because the person was skilled at Instagram, I said, you're going to get your phone out and you're going to go on there and you're going to upload the length of video that you want based on all of the different lengths that you've recorded while you were out and about.
Right.
And you're going to edit it straight in Instagram. Why? Because Instagram's super intuitive, because you can literally turn down the volume of your background noise and then turn up the volume on a voiceover, and you can create a voice over no problem. Press the little CC, it creates your captions. It, like, you don't need to do much with it, and you don't need to do clips and cuts and this and that. And
Right.
it was amazing how she was just like, "Oh, I can do that." And then she went in and immediately right then and there was able to create something. Oh my goodness, I didn't know. I said, there you have it. Little workarounds, and being ready for those workarounds is so important.
Totally. Oh no, I agree with you. We're always going to learn new things. Constantly learning in my role as an advisor from others. Right. It's good to be able to learn ourselves and be humble enough to say, I'm not an expert in this area, but I have somebody that can show us the way, and
Yeah,
be able to acknowledge that as well.
absolutely. And something else I wanted to talk about, because you mentioned asking for help. And there's a really important part of that I think we just kind of glazed over. And that was the sense of community. Having somebody or a group of somebody's there to support you. So from there, I wanted to say, because I know that you have this really cool thing, this eye level to high level. And
Yes.
there's a lot of community involved in there. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
High Level is a program that we built. Originally, it was built because we noticed that in business, many people, brokers, banks, they were giving people money and they basically would say, I need $50,000. But they would give them money and then the person would go and basically just go spend it, right? In whatever things. And there wasn't really a reason or there wasn't a blueprint to what to do with this money and then come back 6 months later, say I need another loan, right? And so as a broker, I started seeing some gaps. I started seeing some problems. I thought when you're building a house, you go and you don't just go to Home Depot and start buying a bunch of materials and just start digging, right? You get a blueprint, you get some professionals to really lay out this what the blueprint is about. And then when you have the blueprint, you're ready to start constructing. The carpenter doesn't do the foundation. The electrician doesn't. There's a role in everything that you do. So why is it that we do this with money, right? With lending, for example. There's so many variables that are needed in making a business do what it's going to do. And money is always, it's not a bad thing to talk about. I need money. But if you're going to get X amount of money, why don't you get the guidance in how to put that money to work? Because after the money's spent, the money's got to be paid back, right? So I noticed that if I could alleviate the burden of debt while being able to help people elevate their business and grow their business, now they're not worried about how they're going to get the money to pay the debt. The debt's going to get paid off through this high level to high level program, but they can now focus on those barriers of entry that was kind of back, right? So now they can go hire the people, buy the equipment, do the things they need to do, and implement the advice that was given so they could grow their business. All the while, through my high level program, we have a third arm of income that's coming in that's alleviating this debt, paying off the debt, and doing the things that need to be done. It's kind of like a sweeper coming in and sweeping at the same time. You're growing because you've alleviated you from a lot of worry and a lot of knowing. It serves two purposes. One, in being able to advise and how to do it, right? Because as a broker for many years, I could give you money. That wasn't the problem. It was that you didn't know what to do with that money. And then once you got the money, you had all this debt, you didn't know how to pay that debt because you didn't put the money to work to make your business grow, to give you the perpetual money that you needed to pay off the debt. So I took care of an area of concern that you didn't even know existed. I had a client yesterday who said, well, Jimmy, what if I don't want to do the high level program? I said, you don't have to, but let me tell you where you're going to go wrong. You're going to get the money. I'm going to give you 50,000 and you're going to come back 6 months later. I've seen it too many times. I'm only telling you from 20 some years of experience, the habits that I've seen, and that's the reason why we built the program, was because we saw the pitfalls, especially with small to medium-sized businesses. But it can happen, it does happen at the higher level. It's just at the higher level, you start putting in different things in place to avoid making those mistakes. By having, that's why we call it high level to high level, because we want to take you to that high level. When you've gone to that high level, you can assume that they've got the proper things in place to help you manage and grow that business. But many times they don't. So they might be a figurative level. They might have all these things, bells and whistles of high level, but they're still missing some components. And trust me when I tell you, it affects. I've seen it in the millions when they're up there at the high level. They suffer from that too. It's just at a different level. But that's how we, as a community, we started hearing the voices in the community. We wanted all these things for institutions to do. And it took somebody thinking differently outside the box to make it a reality, because the door got shut on me many times when I went to hedge fund managers and owners to try to bring this concept or idea to the forefront. And they're like, no, you're too small. We need you to be here. And I'm like, but most of the people that I deal with are too small. So you're telling me I can't help the small guy? We can only help the big guy? That's unfair. There's a gap. We need to bridge the gap. That's what we did.
I love that so much. And you bridged it with community in mind to make sure that they have the capital as well as the capacity to actually achieve what they were meant to achieve, which then leads us into actually creating the impact that we want to create. That is something that I would love to dive into with you, this idea of creating impact and legacy. However, we've only got so many hours in the day. So I wanted to ask you, Jimmy, if you could please rack your mind for just a short time here. Something we couldn't necessarily dive into that right now, something that we can leave with everyone who's joined us for this conversation today. A golden nugget or words of wisdom or some sort of action step that they can carry with them throughout the day, the week, and maybe to refer back to multiple times in their business moving forward. I know that's a big ask, so I'm going to give you a moment to think about it. And
I got it right here. I think it's perfect because this is something that I like to talk about, right? So
I need to let people know that you're going to say is ridiculously important. This is like one of the moments, because this is the part where, okay, if anybody's sitting here going like, I want to hear what Jimmy has to say, I'm sitting on the edge of my seat. Shauna, let him talk. Well, do you have a pen? Do you have paper? Because if you don't, this is the time to get it. And this is the time to remember that this type of huge truth bomb, this type of gold nugget gets dropped every single week within these conversations. So you want to ding the bell and you want to subscribe to Marketing Rebels so that you can actually take note of the amazing messages that you're going to hear to improve your business. Now, Jimmy, I also want your face to be humongous for this. So give me a moment to ensure that everyone can see you as you tell the people what they need to hear. Go ahead.
Okay, most people are waiting for the perfect moment to start. The truth is the moment becomes perfect because you start. Success isn't built from giant leaps. It's built from consistent steps taken when no one is watching. If you want to go from eye level to high level, you have to outgrow the excuses, outwork the doubts, and outlove the fear. And remember, the real goal isn't just to win for yourself. It's to build a legacy so your family and your community can win long after you're gone.
It's beautiful. And I especially loved the moment becomes perfect because you start. That said, where can people start when it comes to diving into your world?
So I've been very proud of our YouTube channel at Business Funding. So definitely go to the YouTube channel. It's a QR code. We also have riosbusinessadvisors.com. So at either of those, you can get a lot of information on how we can help you empower your business for growth and help you in the process.
Oh, I love it. And I've already subscribed. If anybody's hoping to see other people in the community on YouTube, I've already subscribed to the channel so that I can be there learning and contributing and commenting and figuring out where this is going. Because when it comes down to it, community is absolutely a vital component in moving forward, onward and upward, breaking through that dang glass ceiling to achieve the goals that you were meant to achieve. So with that, I want to thank you, Jimmy, so much for being on the show and sharing your words of wisdom.
Thank you, Shauna. It's been awesome, and I appreciate you having me on your platform. I know there's a lot of people out there that are listening, and reach out. You can never get to where you want to go without help. So ask for help, and we will get you there.
100%. And with that, I expect to hear from you guys who've joined us today because we're going to chat soon. See you later.